We often track success in years of effort, but the failure of a dream can be triggered by a single tiny obstacle. Even a decade of momentum can be halted by a lack of the simplest resource. Ethan Parker had spent 4 years building his human capital. While his mother worked double shifts at a local diner, Ethan spent his nights over textbooks, betting that academic excellence would be his family's way out of a small-town cycle of debt. That investment finally reached its peak. He received an email inviting him to a final interview at a technology firm in Chicago, the kind of position that offered a starting salary higher than his parents' combined income. Logic suggests that 4 years of sacrifice should be enough to secure this transition. In this framework, Ethan's talent and hard work are the only variables that should matter for his success. But the math of poverty is rarely logical. This chart compares 4 years of grueling work against a $52 bus ticket. Zooming in, that barrier becomes an impossible cliff. Ethan's account held $3, and his support network was already tapped out. As a storm moved into the city, Ethan sought shelter in a neighborhood church. He wasn't there for a service. He just needed a dry place to sit while he accepted that he would miss the interview and lose the opportunity. His future was stalled. The years of studying and the long shifts his mother worked were currently worth less than a $50 deficit. Outside on the church steps sat Mr. Harris, an elderly veteran who lived on the street. He had a faded jacket, a worn backpack, and a coffee cup with a few singles inside. When Ethan walked out, Harris saw the look on his face. For 10 minutes, Ethan sat on the bench and explained the bus ticket, the interview, and the fact that he was $3 away from failing everyone who had helped him. Without saying a word, Harris reached into his backpack and pulled out a small envelope. It contained $60, the result of weeks of panhandling and saving. He handed the money to Ethan with one requirement. If Ethan ever found himself with more than he needed, he had to be the reason someone else didn't give up. This was a very strange financial transaction. A man who didn't know where he would sleep that night was acting as a venture capitalist, funding a stranger's entire career with his last $60. The investment went to work immediately. The next morning, Ethan used the veteran's cash to board the bus to Chicago, feeling the physical weight of that envelope in his pocket. He walked into the interview with a new sense of pressure. He was representing more than his own resume. He was carrying the responsibility of a stranger's total sacrifice. Ethan got the job. Within 6 months, he had a steady paycheck and a modest apartment. For the first time in his life, his mother stopped working double shifts, and their family debt began to disappear. The $60 had performed exactly as Harris intended, creating a stable life for Ethan and a path out of financial desperation for his family. Ethan eventually returned to that church. He brought a new jacket, groceries, and an envelope with far more than $60 inside, hoping to finally thank the man who backed him. The bench was empty. A church volunteer told Ethan that Mr. Harris had passed away 3 weeks earlier. It was then that Ethan learned the true price of the bus ticket. The $60 Harris gave away was the exact amount he had been saving to pay for his heart medication. Harris had told the church volunteers that Ethan's opportunity was more important than his own prescription. He made a conscious choice to prioritize a stranger's future over his own health. This wasn't a gift of spare change. Harris traded his own physical survival to ensure Ethan had a tomorrow. Ethan refused to let that sacrifice end at an empty bench. He took the money he intended for Harris and used it to start a system that could help others. He called it the Second Chance Fund. This network map shows how Ethan's initial donation provided travel for people stuck behind $50 barriers. Over a decade, it eventually covered travel for thousands, turning one man's final act into a massive web of stabilized families. A miracle isn't defined by the help you receive. It is only complete when you become the reason someone else regains their hope.